Hey you guys, what's up? I'm Ashley from heavenathome.org, and this is the Heaven at Home podcast, where my goal is to encourage you in your personal growth journey while being open, honest, and owning my story. We have faith-based conversations and tackle a bunch of different tough topics. Check out the description to follow me and learn more. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. Let's do this. Okay, this is going to be a really deep philosophical conversation. And we're going to talk about the issue of intimacy and why you don't actually want it like you think you do. When I'm using the word you in the context of this conversation, it's kind of going to be like the royal you, like the general population, even me, myself. I think a lot of times people crave intimacy in relationships. We want to be seen, we want to be known, we want to be loved. And especially in the context of romantic relationships, that's a thing that we pursue. And I think that's a noble pursuit. I think that's a good thing to pursue. But what I've seen, especially in our culture, is that we're starting to lack the capacity to foster and steward healthy intimacy in relationships. And so I kind of just wanted to talk about this at a multi-faced level, just put some thoughts out there. These are things that I've been reflecting on even just for myself, but I feel like I see a lot of patterns in society also. So there are very few relationship dynamics that actually reach or require intimacy. And just to quickly define intimacy, I think it requires a certain level of depth that few people get to see. It implies that it's something that is rare and precious. It's not easily accessed by everyone. It requires a close connection in a mutual sense. It implies that you're truly seen, truly known, truly accepted, and truly loved. And in my mind, it's built on trust and the ability to be vulnerable while still having a sense of emotional safety. I think one of the reasons why marriage is so hard is because of the issue of intimacy and the way that we go about it. One of the things that I've noticed for me in my own relationships with significant others, friends, family, I'm not going to assume that this is true for all relationships, but in general, the greater the level of intimacy there is, or the greater level of intimacy that you're pursuing, the greater potential there is for conflict, the deeper a relationship gets. I think even as Christians, when we're seeking out church communities, this is one of the reasons that we get uncomfortable around the conversation of accountability. It can be really uncomfortable to be seen. And it can be really uncomfortable for people to tell us about ourselves. So anyway, I started thinking about, my own relationships and taking inventory from that standpoint and thinking about why the potential for conflict increases when you want more intimacy or when there is more intimacy. Why does that happen? And I kind of narrowed it down to this train of thought where I was like, okay, we know that there is a foundation of love. Like, I love this person loves me. And that doesn't always imply that we have the same values. Sometimes we have different values. And if we happen to have the same values, then we have those values at different degrees. And if there are cases where we have the same values to the same degree, then sometimes there's just differences in the way that we apply those values in our everyday life. There are some relationships I was thinking about, like the reason for breakups or the reason for relationships coming to an end. I went through a transitional period last year in September. And I reflect a lot on like, okay, what could I have done differently? What could I have said differently? Was there any way for me to clearly express my intention in a way that it would have been received in the way that I was trying to deliver it? Or, what kept me from being more straightforward with this person? Like if I'm seeing a friend entertaining a negative thought pattern, if I'm seeing them feeding into their negative feelings that could cause destruction or division, what keeps me from speaking more openly? What keeps me from holding them more accountable? Or sometimes even checking my own responses, like when people, and this is not always like 100% case, but there are some times where I've thought about something and in conversation the other person expresses like a similar concern and highlights it. Like, how do I respond? Do I end up getting defensive, or do I appreciate it? I think so far in this point of my life, because I very rarely feel understood, I tend to appreciate it, especially if it's delivered in the right way. I think that's the thing with me. I like when people can tell me about myself and they are accurate. That's one. I like when people can tell me about myself accurately, but with a compassionate delivery. When they are not condemning, and when they are ultimately trying to encourage me in my growth in some capacity, either in my faith or in my thinking or in my healing. I tend to appreciate that. But I just feel like I've noticed, like I've perceived in my mind certain thresholds, even within my own relationships. And I like sort of internally check in with myself, like, are you prepared to cross a line right now? Like, if you do this, you're stepping into uncharted territory. You don't know how the other person's going to react. You don't know how they're going to take it. There's some relationships where in the past I had to draw boundaries to remain a healthy person and let go of trying to control people and their actions by influencing them. That's something I had to do with my siblings. There was a point where I was very unhealthy, I was very toxic, and I had to learn to say, stop telling me about your business. Like, I can't hear it. I can't know, because a lot of times I was giving advice, and after years of it being dismissed and then them facing the consequences of their actions, it was just a lot for me. It made me a very angry, apathetic person. Like, I didn't like the way that I was speaking and the way that the relationship was heading. So I'm not talking about boundaries, I'm talking about thresholds. And even today, like, there are some people that I talk to, I'm like, am I being a good friend right now? Am I being a good friend by withholding accountability? Yeah, see, that just puts me into like a super long pause right there, because I'm this is the issue of intimacy right here. I just feel like I internally count the cost. And like, there are times where I think, man, okay, am I being a good friend by withholding this advice? By not telling this person exactly what I think or exactly what they need to hear? Am I doing them a disservice right now? And I think what we would find on the other end of questions like that is just this, unless this is just me, the question of being okay with a relationship ending in pursuit of relationships that foster intimacy. Like, are we okay losing out on the relationships that we have if we know that we are maintaining like godly character, godly intentions, if we're trying to be gentle in our delivery, and kind and noble, and ultimately trying to encourage the other person to be their best, to have the best. Yeah, I just feel like there's usually like this choice that we reach. And so anyway, so that's some of the ways that I was just taking inventory of my own relationships. And so when I think about just differences, like differences in the way that we apply our political worldview or the way that we perceive purity, when I consider emotions like anger or bitterness, and I think about like conversations like that, although there might be love in my relationships, in the human definition of love, there's not always intimacy. And if I'm being frank, I think if we sought out intimacy in each and every single one of our relationships, we would probably get exhausted because intimacy requires a lot of work. It's a lot of work to make yourself emotionally available enough to express your thoughts and your feelings. And it's also a lot of work to hear a person according to their own thoughts and feelings. And it takes a lot of work to maintain the same goal of intimacy. I feel like intimacy can't be reached unless both parties are in agreement that, hey, we want to reach a certain level. We want this kind of dynamic, and we ultimately want this relationship to last. That takes work for both people to maintain that goal. And so ultimately getting to a point where both people care to preserve the relationship long term, that's like that's like another factor that I think about. And then I'm considering, the relationships that we consider voluntary and involuntary. Like, I can't choose my parents, I can't choose my siblings, I can't choose my family, but I can choose my friends. In the dating phase, you can choose your significant other, in my opinion. In the biblical perspective, when you are married and you have a spouse, that choice is no longer a choice. Those relationships are no longer considered optional. You made a covenant, you made a commitment. To me, that's what that means, is that regardless of how your feelings sway or not, you ultimately devoted yourself to be there and maintain the goal of preserving the relationship. So anyway, how do I say this? I guess bringing this back out into a cultural standpoint and a lot of the things that I see, I think a lot of people say that they want relationships, they want love, they want intimacy, right? But when they get to a point, or even when they get to a level of intimacy where they're no longer happy with what they're seeing, they're more likely to back out in some way. You realize that you don't have to deal with the other person. You don't have to wrestle with the ways that the other person is different. You don't have to wrestle through healthy conflict resolution. You don't have to wrestle through the internal work of maintaining the intention to keep the person in your life, and even more so, love the person in your life. It does come down to a choice. Like, the more you see, the more you have to get to a point where you're like, okay, am I okay with what I'm seeing? Do I want to continue to engage with this person? Do I want to continue to pursue more? I think there's a healthy point of backing out. And this is one of the things that I've discussed in different videos or even maybe different episodes. But I do not do toxic. I do not do drama. So if I see that someone has like a bitter personality, like I'm not even saying that they wrestle with bitterness or, they need healing in a certain area. I'm saying like a bitter, angry personality, like this is who you are in a lot of your relationships. Or if I'm seeing that someone is fake, and when I say fake, I mean that they're pretending to love me, they're pretending to have good intentions, but ultimately they despise me and they hate me, I avoid that. And I'm expressing this to say, like, I think there's a normal sense in any of the people that we interact with where it's okay to back out and it's okay to make that decision. When I'm thinking about intimacy, I'm thinking about the relationships that I have that I want to keep long term. These people are relatively healthy. We have enough things in common that serve like a solid foundation. There's like a mutual love, mutual respect, things like that. And so when I was talking about like getting to a level of intimacy where you're no longer happy, or where you're no longer happy with what you see, when you're no longer accepting of it, you're more likely to back out. And I feel like that's actually one of the ways that the enemy likes to sneak in, is by creating agenda against the other person based on selfish needs or unforgiveness, holding grudges, or just a lack of emotional ability or being able to deal with conflicts in healthy ways, or to be able to express that you need more from somebody, And anyway, intimacy requires sacrifice. I think that's another issue that keeps people from actually wanting the intimacy that they say they do. In wanting to be seen and known, in wanting things for yourself, you have to be able to do that for another person. You actually have to hold space for another person to be seen and known. And there can be times where it appears that both of those things can't happen at the same time. And I feel like it takes a certain level of skill that a lot of people do not have. It takes wisdom and discernment, and emotional intelligence to learn the balance that can happen. Like the balance that is possible where you're able to express yourself and the other person is able to express themselves, and it doesn't cancel out. It's not mutually exclusive. That being said, I think there are times where intimacy requires sacrifice in the way that you do have to deny yourself for the greater good of preserving what you have. Or you have to have enough internal resources to continue to give from a selfless place when you don't get what you feel like you're giving. So that's another thing. And then there's just the fact that it's uncomfortable. To be known, you have to be seen, and being seen is really hard. Being seen is hard enough. I always say it's very rare that I feel like people know me better than I know myself. I believe that that's true. And the only person who knows me better than me is God. And I think it's a really beautiful gift when people can see me past myself. I find that very, very beautiful. When people can see you past what you're saying in your brokenness, what you're saying in your pain, when they can see you past what you're doing and ultimately call you to who you are in God, that is priceless. I just think in my eyes, it's almost spiritual and prophetic when people can see the root issue and have strategic conversations to be able to get to the heart of the matter. To me, that is what it's like to be known. And again, to my earlier point, in order to be known, you have to be seen. So being seen implies that you're not just seen for the person that you are in public, but you're seen for the person that you are in private. And you're not just seen for your best, you're also seen for your worst. And you're not just seen for your strength, you're also seen for your weakness. You're not just seen for when you're healed and happy, you're seen for when you're bruised and broken. And I feel like people who can be with you in both are the people that you should hold on to. I feel like I've seen some relationship dynamics. I don't know if this is just the way that things turned out or if this is like a pattern, but sometimes I feel like people are able to love the broken and weak version of you, and they are not able to love the happy, healed, confident version of you. That's dangerous. And in the same token, or I guess on the flip side, on the flip side, you might have someone who is able to be there for you when you're happy and you got everything taken care of and you're good on your own. But when you have a need, they don't love you anymore, or they're not available, or they're not content with the relationship. You got to look for people who can handle both. And I like mentioning each of these different like contrasting points because we're human, and this is stuff that everyone deals with. This is stuff that everyone has. Everyone has strengths, everyone has weaknesses. There are ways that people present themselves socially, and then there's a way that they are in private. I feel like intimacy happens when someone is able to be accepting of all parts of who you are without judging you or condemning you. And as a Christian and a faith-based personal growth person, in my eyes, the standard is Jesus. I feel like we should be wanting to be more like him, and we should be, in my mind, like accountable to hearing criticism that aligns with our faith. So I just want to I want to clarify that, because in saying that you want someone who's accepting, I don't mean accepting of sin. I don't mean accepting of like toxic behaviors. I don't mean accepting of evil or anything like that. I just mean a normal, standard human weakness, right? That can be addressed and healed and made whole by depending on the Holy Spirit. That's what I'm trying to say. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can do that well. And I feel like it takes a lot of trust to get to that place. And it also takes a lot of wisdom and discernment from both people. In getting to know someone, understanding when to leave and when to stay, having a healthy perception of give and take, both people being able to present good, healthy, solid character with the pursuit of growth and not staying stuck where you are, not staying stuck in unhealthy behaviors, not trying to make the same mistake twice, and getting to a point where there's mutual accountability, where you're both being pushed to depend more on the Holy Spirit for fruitfulness in the relationship. It takes a lot of trust, a lot of wisdom, a lot of discernment, and a lot of dependence on the Holy Spirit, which I'm going to touch on again in a second. But so to be known, you have to be seen, right? But in order to be known, I'd argue that you also have to know yourself. In stages where people are getting to know you, they will only know what they see, and they will only know what you tell them. They will only be able to make sense of you in the way that you explain you. I don't know if you've ever tried to get to know a person who doesn't know themselves, but I have, and that is an incredibly frustrating experience. Trying to talk to someone who doesn't know why they do what they do, why they feel what they feel, why they think what they think, or why they don't know what they feel, why they don't know what they think. That is frustrating. And even in my own relationships, I've kind of seen that here and there where I'm asking someone, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep making the same mistake? Why do you measure one thing over another? Why do you not see this? Like, what's going on internally? It's frustrating. And if you don't know yourself, yes, it limits the other person's ability to know you, but I think it points to a lack of emotional intelligence that you need in order for a relationship to last. So that's another thing. And in case you haven't been able to put it together, throughout this conversation, I'm pointing out the issues of intimacy. Like, these are really, really crucial thresholds in relationships. All right, so finally, last thing I'll say is that we can't do intimacy without Jesus. We just can't. This world has a very broken, distorted perception of love. If you haven't done it yet, please listen to the podcast episodes that I've done on love, on what love looks like. This world defines love in the scope of human failure and weakness and the tendency to accidentally fall in and accidentally fall out. It is not biblical. And I think that's one of the main issues that we see, is that we try to go about our relationships without depending on God. And actually, the more that I think about it, even in the context of my own relationships, the more I'm like, man, like, I could probably just have a conversation where I'm like, hey, do you mind if we invite the Holy Spirit into our relationship so that we are both pursuing deeper levels of connection with each other in a way that honors Him and ultimately honors each other? Like, I probably just have to express that in words. But yeah, I just feel like the love that this world offers, the love that this world understands, is so broken. The love that this world offers has roots of trauma, unhealed trauma, unforgiveness, selfishness over selflessness, insecurity, and I feel like even within like marriage and intimacy in marriage, the way that we view covenant as like a choice after, I feel like, yeah, I just feel like we have not no concept. We have a very limited concept of what unbreakable covenant love looks like. Marriage especially is supposed to be a thing that reflects Christ's love for the church. And without Jesus even there, like, relationships can become very transactional, rather than covenantal. So anyway, these are just like all my jumbled thoughts here, but in my mind, these are the issues of intimacy. These are the reasons why, despite people saying that they want it in application, and when it comes down to it, and all the things, they don't actually want it like they think they do. And so I would love for this episode to be a moment of reflection for you in your own relationships, especially relationships that you would like to grow, especially in relationships where you would be seeking godly connection. If you could just think about are there thresholds that I haven't dared to cross? Have I been willing to share Jesus? Have I been willing to invite him in the context of this relationship? Have I been as willing to be held accountable as I think I am, as I say I am? All those things. Anyway, yeah. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys so much for listening. Feel free to DM me to send me your feedback. Check out the description below to follow me on social media. This podcast is listener supported. Don't forget to subscribe. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. I'll see you in the next one.